The most important thing is that you have a vision, that you have a goal. Because without that vision and without that goal, again, you're drifting around and you're never gonna end up anywhere. People don't become successful just by accident.
I was 14 years old when I first heard Arnold Schwarzenegger speak about creating a vision of the future and living into it as though it were true. And this is the way that happened. I was in my parents' basement in the summer on a Sunday, hot summer's day. And I was flipping around channels on this TV, on the old black and white 19-inch television that the family had. And the announcer said, coming up next, an interview with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I thought, I'll watch it. And so the interview starts, and there's Arnold sitting there in this chair in this studio. And this journalist interviewer is sitting across from him in this chair. The interviewer looked like the cat that ate the canary. Snarky is the only word I could think of to describe this guy. And so they do a little chit-chat, and then the interviewer ambushes Arnold and says, well, your movie just lost, and gives this figure of how much his movie lost, and asks, what are you going to do now that your movie bombed? And without missing a beat, Arnold said, I am going to become the #1 action-adventure actor in Hollywood. And the interviewer looked at him and leaned forward and said, well, how are you going to do that? Your movie just bombed. And Arnold said, by doing the exact same thing I did with bodybuilding. I'm going to create a vision of the future and live into it as though it were true. And I sat there, stunned. I'd never heard of such a thing. You see, I grew up poor. I grew up being taught, well, you get a job and you go to work and you just kind of go through life, and no, there's better opportunities, better ways of doing things. And it had a great impact on me. I didn't quite know what he meant, but I figured it out along the way. I started my first company when I was 22. I had several businesses, started them, owned them, run them and sold them. And life hasn't been a picnic by any means. I've had my ups and I've had my downs. And through it all, I've learned a few things. And those words of Arnold have been with me. Create a vision of the future and live into it as though it were true. And rather than sitting here trying to explain that, I figured a much better way to communicate it. So why don't you come with me and follow me out to the lake, and I'll give you a visual. Thank you for following me out here to the lake. I figured it'd be a much better thing to give you a visual of what it is to create a vision of the future and live into it as though it were true, rather than to just explain it. So let's look at this water here. This water, we're going to use it as a representation of life. And right here where I'm standing, this is the present. And in the present, this is the only thing that's happening. You can't show me the past. It doesn't exist. It only exists in the mind. You can show me the results of the past by buildings being built and roads being made and things that happen. We all know there's history, but that's all in the past. The past doesn't exist in the present, only the results of the decisions that were made. And so what we tend to do, because we can remember the past as human beings, we go through the past and relive it into the present. We think about the past, and all of a sudden, it's coming up forward. It just kind of rolls into the present. We take this rock, this is our energy, this is our attention, and we can write on this something like the ex, or bad relationships, or troubles, and we take it and we toss it into the past, and we focus on that, and all of a sudden, here comes the past, right into the present. It just shows up automatically because we summoned it, because that's where we put our attention. All that energy comes running forward. And here's the thing, when you think about the past and you recall the things in the past, especially things that are highly emotionally charged, be they good, bad, or whatever, you remember everything about that on a subconscious level. You remember how you felt, where you were, what your physical conditions were, what your financial conditions were, whether you had a job that you loved or a business was thriving or failing, or it's a package deal. It's all grouped together. So we may think that we're just paying attention to one little aspect of the past, but when we do that, everything that was going on is connected to it. And so all that comes rushing forward, right here to where we are in the present. You can't help it. You can't stop it. And this is why life often keeps happening the same way over and over and over again. It's because we haven't learned to stop energizing the past and engaging it and bringing it into the future. You know, the past is where all your habits are. All the limiting thoughts, beliefs that keep us trapped, all that stems from programming of the past, decisions that were made, experiences that we had, habits we developed. It's all in the past. And so we have this whole industry out there, for example, called scrapbooking, where people make these elaborate books about the past. Well, that's all good and great. That's fine. You know, there's a lot of things back there that are good to remember. There's a lot of power that can be drawn. A lot of situations we've gone through that we survived that we can plug into, but we often recall the things that are troublesome. So let's look at the future. Let's consider a few things about that. So instead of putting our energy back there with whatever the case may be, struggle in court, somebody died, the list could go on and on. Let's focus on the past, no more. Let's do this. Let's write down on our energy my vision of the future. I don't know what yours is, but I know what mine is. Whatever yours is up to you. And we take that and we throw that into the future. And we speak life into it. And all of a sudden, here it is. It shows up. We keep throwing them into the future. And it just keeps showing up. We live into it. We created the vision of the future and we live into it as though it were true. And just like you remember the past, and the past doesn't really exist, let's start remembering the future, because the future doesn't really exist. It's just as valid as the past. We just don't have the wiring to go with it yet. So what would happen if we took the time and we actually, instead of making a scrapbook of the past, we made a scrapbook of the future and started remembering that and putting our energy there and calling that into the present. Because in the future you don't have a disposition. In the future you don't have habits. That's all in the past. So if we start looking in the future, that's where possibility lies. There is no possibility in the past. It's done. You can't change it. All possibility comes from the future. Put your energy, your thoughts, your vision, your focus, your passion into the future. And it's a funny thing. We all have bitter experiences in the past, things we would have done differently, things we wish had changed. And if we stop recalling it and summing it into the present and reliving it, and we put our energy into the future, just like when I throw this rock into the future, the energy comes back, and I do that consistently, those ripples continue on, back into the past, back behind me. And this is one of the great secrets of life, because pretty soon you start changing your vision of the past. Not that the experiences changed or things didn't happen, but that they no longer hold you. You're no longer captive of the past. You become a participant, a volunteer of the future, a creator of the future, instead of being held captive. You're actually engaged in making something that is your vision. You're not chained anymore. And it's really, really that direct. It's all about writing down your vision of the future and the steps that you can take to create your vision. Like I said, I don't know what your vision is, I only know what mine is. Let me ask you a question. What if you had somebody standing right here next to you, also throwing their energy into the future? If it wasn't just me standing here, creating a vision, putting my time and energy into it. What if I happened if I had somebody here with me, like a spouse, on the same page with the same vision, cooperating and throwing their energy to the future? And we had the kids and the friends and the coworkers and relatives, and we had a group of people all throwing rocks into that future, all on the same page. We all have our very different variations of it, but this is what synergy is about. Getting people around you who will participate in your vision of the future. Doesn't mean they don't have their own vision of the future. They certainly should. If they don't, you need to help them get one. Maybe bring them to this video and have them take a look at it. Start to understand what it is to get a vision. But it's amazing what happens when those around you just apply some energy to the future in your behalf. It's incredible what happens, how things line up, the people that come into play, the situations that unfold. Oh, well, that was a strange coincidence. No, not really. It was creating a future and living into it. So, getting this written down is not the only step you got to do. You have to live into it. Live into it. And what that means is you just can't sit and think about your future. Well, wouldn't that be great? One day, someday, this could be, yeah. If you're not taking the action and making a plan and engaging that future, it's not going to happen. It's just a dream. You know you're serious when you start taking action. When you lay out a plan and you get some mentors and you make the right sacrifices and you alter your life and you learn how to shape your life to make that future happen. And we're going to go into that into another video. One of the videos I have put together is how to shape your life, how to be the participant in your own vision, how to get your internal world and your external world around you and lined up and congruent with living into your vision, creating it. One of the things I've learned is that I can't do everything I want. I am limited in time and resources. And this is something I've always taught my sons. You can't do everything you want, but you can do anything you want. You just have to be willing to choose because you're limited in your time and your resources. There's simply not enough time to do everything that you could possibly want to do. As far as building the skills, putting in the infrastructure, getting things in place, it has to do with the choices we make in the past as well. I'm in my 50s. Right now, I'm certainly not going to become an astronaut or an Olympic athlete, anything like that. I've had enough of my life pass that those doors of opportunity have closed. But I can find a way to continue to fill my passions and dreams, to fuel my vision. In a lot of ways, I find it easier to do that because I've had a lifetime of experience. It's one of the keys of learning is you sharpen your skills as you go through life, and you compound that with other people who've been there before, to engage with those people who've been there before you. You know, there's a French philosopher whose name was Émile Coué, who said, when the imagination and the willpower are in conflict or antagonistic, it is always the imagination that wins, without exception. The key here is to make sure that your willpower and your imagination are aligned so they're not in conflict. Imagine where you want to be. Create that vision. Exercise your willpower to take you to that vision. Write down what you're going to be doing, how you're going to get there, and put a plan together. As I said, get a mentor. Find somebody who's already been there. Cut that learning curve. Exercise your willpower and use your imagination to carry you to your vision, to create your vision of the future and live into it as though it were true. You know, it's like I tell my sons, doing what you feel will never get you what you want. People are always focused on doing what they feel. It's a short-term thing. And when you have that long-term vision and you're executing things accordingly, there's an energy that happens and a clarity of mind, and things line up and work for you, but you have to be serious about how you're going to get there and what you're doing. My name is Philip Laerdal, and I hope the time you've invested to watch this video you found to be useful. I have really enjoyed putting it together, and I know the experience that I had when I was young listening to Arnold speak has made a great deal of difference. When things were tough, I would just remember I have a vision, and I'm going to live into it as though it were true, just like he had a vision of being the #1 action-adventure actor in Hollywood, in spite of the fact he had setbacks and obstacles. Once again, my name is Philip Laerdal. Thank you for taking the time to view this video. Above all else, remember that you are the craftsman of your future. You are the author of your destiny, and that position doesn't belong to anybody else, so don't let anybody else take that position, or don't give that position to somebody else. Follow your dreams. Follow your passions.